Thank you all for coming. Being that it's 7, a couple seconds after, I'd like to call this special meeting, February 23, 2023, of the Board of Public Works to order. Start with a quick invocation. Lord, help us to make sound decisions for our citizens. Help us to make sober logic of what's going on. Help all the underprivileged people, and keep us safe. Amen. And we can do a quick pledge allegiance. Darren, could you start us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much for coming. Great turnout, and we don't expect to get anything completed now, but I'm going to turn it right over to Darren Gordon, our esteemed general manager, and he'll take us through it. Thank you, Darren.
I don't know if it's esteemed or steamed, one or the other, I don't know which. First of all, let's make a couple of introductions. Here's the agenda for this evening. We're going to have some brief introductions now. I'll give you a brief history, again brief. Talk about some funding options. Also talk about getting the stormwater utility committee that we're looking to put together so we can have your help in making this work. And then finally, we will have questions and comments, and that's what we're going to turn over to you. And we'll set a few ground rules when we get to there. So let's begin. First of all, for introductions, I'd like to first introduce our board. John Ortworth, he is our president. Raise our hand. We've got Bill Dees, who is our vice president, I believe. Secretary, get it right. And we've got Bob Cohen, who's also a member of our board, and we appreciate their service very, very, very much. For the city, we have two councilmen that I have recognized. If I miss any, let me know. In the very back, protecting the door, we almost all know our vice mayor, Mike Dobson. He's with the 2nd Ward, I believe. And we also have Stephen Franke here, and he is with the 3rd Ward. And we appreciate both of them, their interest in our stormwater and moving this forward, so we appreciate that. I'm also going to introduce my staff, who I am absolutely proud of and thankful for. First of all, back in the middle, that really makes it, got to raise your hand, Matthew Jones. He's our IT guy. He is also the wizard of all. He makes it all work, and he does it very, very well. I've got Courtney Harris. Courtney, raise your hand. She's my executive secretary, and she is fantastic. She's helped keep this all organized and going in the right direction. Paul Trenhale, he's somewhat, raise your hand, he's a little bit follicularly challenged. Other than that, he's about the best CPA and the best finance guy around. And then hiding in the corner, almost everybody knows Matt Munslinger. You either know him or you've dealt with him, and we all appreciate the very fact that he's our operations guy, and he just keeps things absolutely running. And I hope you recognize that you've got the best utility around, because the folks that are serving you through that utility, and it is not me, it is them, and it is the other staff that's out there doing the daily work, and we appreciate them. Two other people that are very, very important to this effort for stormwater, and that is our engineering. And Prabha Kumar, she works with Black and Veatch. And she's attending virtually. She does not live here or anywhere close. However, I want you to see some of the things that she does. She's been working with us for a couple of years. She's actually the one that helped us do the pervious impervious back in 2018 that most of you voted on. This is some of her biography when she goes and speaks. I will tell you that she is pretty much the #1 person in the nation when it comes to establishing stormwater, doing it right, having experience for it. If you would look right at the second paragraph, you will see where she's already done some work and established stormwater utilities. Wilmington, Delaware, Newark, Delaware, Kansas, Florida, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, Newark, New Jersey, Philadelphia, PA, and Minneapolis, Minnesota. So that experience alone is well worth it. And so I will tell you that we're getting some exceptional consulting work. We're having them help us immensely. They're helping us to make sure it's fair as we move forward and doing it right. The second one that I'd like to introduce is, he's here. Mr. Riley, if you'll at least raise your hand. He is some legal representation. We have had James Lemon, who works for the city. He's very busy working for the city, doing those things that are municipal-wide. I've asked him, and he said that it would be all right if we got some additional assistance. With Mr. Riley, let me show you, if you look in this little corner here on the left that you cannot read, let me help you read it a little bit better. There's a couple of committees. Not only is he an attorney, so he knows the laws, etc., as a representative at the state capitol, he's on the following committees and helps take care of that. Two in particular, the fourth from the bottom, Special Committee on Election Contests. Last one, Elections and Elected Officials. He's also on your administrative rules, general laws. So when we start talking about the need to have a sales tax, or perhaps some mix of sales tax and property tax, we've got the right guy, okay? Even when this is all done, we're going to take this with his blessing. We're going to take it to the mayor and city council. We'll have to have their blessing, and James Lemon will be there as well, and I believe we'll have his blessing because of what we've got here. And we're going to be able to make this work, and we're going to have a lot of work ahead of us yet to do. So I hope you feel I have great confidence because of the team we've assembled here. Let's talk very quickly, briefly about history. Where have we been? Back in about 1962, a previous general manager said this is the first time that he actually saw work that was being done on a stormwater utility. The city would take care of the above ground stuff, we would take care of below ground stuff. The reason we were both doing this is at the time, sewer and stormwater was all going through the same pipe. Not until 1976 did it become a law that you have to separate it out. Because you don't want to have, you don't want to treat all the stormwater that might be coming to your wastewater treatment plant, but you also don't want sewage that might be making it out to the river without being treated. So all the way across America, they separated it out, 1976. In 2001, it actually started getting budgeted. And so some of the things, again, the city was taking care of issues in the general fund. The BPW, we started putting in $10,000 a year. That was coming out of the sewer fund. But with laws, with the accounting requirements for business and keeping utilities separated, where we're running an electric utility, a water utility, a sewer utility, it became against the law. It became inappropriate for us to be taking monies to take care of the stormwater without its own designation. So now we've been moving forward from there. There were problems. You can see that one in the picture. We've got several of them. We were band-aiding best we can. We were putting plates on things, and when it had to be fixed, came up with administrative money, something that got done. Most of that came through the city. In 2017, the city finally came to a resolution. They put it on paper in resolution and said, we are authorizing and directing the Board of Public Works to become its own stormwater utility. It was fully and completely our responsibility to take care of all of the pipes, all of the catch basins, everything below the street to take care of stormwater. With that, almost all of you remember in 2019, we came to you with a vote to talk about using impervious surface to determine how much you should be paying for a stormwater tax. It came to use the people to vote on it, and it failed. But it only failed by 12 votes. And I believe it was about 1,005 to 1,013. I can't quote it exactly, but it wasn't a lot. But there was only a couple thousand people that actually came out to vote at that time. So that's something to keep in mind. Finally, we came to you again. So we had used our consultant. We brought to the city council. We changed it up. We wanted to simplify. Sometimes pervious, impervious. Some people maybe were confused with it, maybe didn't understand the principle behind it. We brought to you using simply a very simple measure. What is the gross acreage of each parcel? We took and figured out what we needed to make. We took out the number of total acres that would be taxed. We also removed any non-taxable properties that are out there. We did the math, and it was $567 per acre. And that's what we brought to you. And it was very good that there were the folks that have agricultural lands, those that have larger properties, 2 acres more. If you had 2 acres, you do the math, $567 times 2, it's over $1,000 for that tax for that home. Those that were even larger, it became even more painful. And with that, we pulled it. One of the things that we wanted to be able to do was to have an appeals so that we could take the outliers. Almost every time you create a tax that's going to cover a large base, there's going to be some that are going to be on that end that gets hurt. And we wanted an opportunity to take that out. We were told by legal that that could not be done with the tax legislation we had it. So with that, we went back to the city and we asked to pull it. So here we are today. And what we'd like to do is be able to move forward and still come up with an option so that we can fund what's needed to run a stormwater utility. And there's a need for it. So some of the options are, we could go back to the pervious impervious assessment. We could go back to the gross acreage, but perhaps put a cap at some level that over X acres, that's no longer taxed. Or what about a sales tax? Is that an option? That's a question mark. Or even, is there a hybrid? When I say hybrid, there's a community, I believe, in Kansas City that has their own, but they use both a sales tax and a property tax of some sort in order to take and fund their stormwater utility. The other thing I will tell you is on the back on the table as you came in, there's a simple little piece of paper. If you look at this, it's a little square, but there's over a dozen other ways that other utilities in the nation and Canada have been assessing their stormwater. Now, I will tell you, the committee, I'm going to say, let's look heavily at this, maybe coming back to the impervious, but take a look at this, take it home. The other thing I would encourage you is look at the bottom of this paper right here. It is Western Kentucky University. They have this study, stormwater study they do annually. I would encourage you to go home, take and look that up and see what they do, what they kind of report. There's some fantastic information, but there are many options, more than just these. We're willing to look at them, but that's what we want to do. We want to do that exploration and which one would be the best, most acceptable. So, lots and lots of options. Some things I'd like to teach you just about stormwater, things that I've learned. Also, some of the ideas that I would like you to have in your head, especially if you're interested in being a part of the committee to help come up with these answers. Number one, altruistic. When I say that, this is Grand Avenue. Now, what's fun about Grand Avenue, this was taken probably over a year ago, and you can see that water's running down. Now, will our storm water stop this? No. If you're going to get 1.5 inches of rain in 2 hours, you're going to have water running down. But will it mitigate it? Yes. If you want to look, this was yesterday. What street was this on, Matthew? Matt? Please pass it around. Grand Avenue. Some more. Please pass it around. We got 5 of them. That was just yesterday. So is it any better? Still happening. So I hope we recognize when I say safety, sometimes the guy at the top of the hill, if you don't have any pipes or puddles in front of your house, you're going to say, I don't care. Why do I pay for anything? I don't have a problem. You do, because we've got to change the mindset that it's what's happening at your home versus what's happening on your city streets. Do you drive the city streets? The answer is yes, we all do. Do we drive downtown? Do we drive and get our groceries? Everybody does. What does the storm drain help? It helps streets. The board, we're going to be taking care of the pipes and the grates, and we're going to make sure they're clean. They're not going to cave in. They're not going to be problems. The city, I get to point at Mike and Stefan, they're going to make sure that the roads are still solid, that they have curbs, because when it is flooding like this, where does the water stay? It should stay on the roads and in the curbs. So to simply say, I don't have anything to do with stormwater, that's not true. We've got to change our thinking. It's because you drive the roads of Hannibal. That's what stormwater systems protect and work. Okay? So everybody, the other thing, this is purely subliminal messaging. Okay? This is evil wickedness. I hope you look down at the very bottom here, the HBPW sign, on every one of it says, for the greater good of the community. The stormwater, we need everybody. This is for the greater good of the community. So those folks that have the brand new home that are out west of town that do not have a pipe in front of their yard, we still need their help for the community. Okay? Everybody's got to be involved. All right. The other thing that we've got to look at is we've got other things coming. I'll talk a little more about this. We've got MS4. MS4 is Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. It is a federal law. It is a state law. It is regulations that are getting put down to every community. We are set as a stormwater 2 because of the size and population which we have. We have regulations that we're going to have to take care of. Some people may call it an unfunded mandate. I agree completely. We've got to fund it somehow. I'll get a little more later. Number 2, we have revenue requirements. I only printed off 10 sheets back there. I believe, are they all gone, Courtney? No. We've still got a couple of them. They are printed. These numbers are numbers that we got through the work and help of Black and Veatch. We need to have, in order to create a stormwater utility that for the next 10 years will help improve, help us operate, help us maintain, and help us meet MS4 requirements, between $3.6 and $4 million a year. We're going to have to clean the entire system. When we take the dirt out of there, if there is any oil or any radiator fluid or any contaminants, we have to take that, and all of it has to go to the dump, to a landfill. We can't just simply reuse that as clean dirt. So all of the stuff that we're taking out is going to have to be paid for and hauled away. We're going to have to take and use a vehicle of some kind, probably a vac truck. Vac trucks are becoming absolutely invaluable. They're also very expensive. So we're looking at having at least a vac truck to be able to do that. If you do not get a copy of this, it is available electronically. We've made all of this stuff available to you. So please don't fight over these, but please know that this is not a shot in the dark. It is not a dart being thrown at the wall. We look very carefully at what we need in order to run this utility. If you look at what we're going to end up with a 10-year plan, being able to put X amount of dollars into operations, X into maintenance, X into capital improvements, we will have approximately $321,000 left over. If you do the math on that, out of 10 years, that means 1%, less than 1% left over. I believe that's very tight. I believe that's very fiduciarily responsible to what we have created, to what we plan to do with it. Okay? Next two, again, meeting the revenue needs. Back to MS4. These are some of the rules. You can look it up. This is with the Missouri Department of Natural Resources. We have received, we came and they did an investigation, a review just a couple of weeks ago. We got a letter back. We have several deficiencies. And currently, we're going to be writing letters, letting them know that while this is a deficiency, we don't have the funds to repair it. They've been very, very understanding on one hand. On the other hand, we still have this coming at us. We've got to do something. The very fact that we've bringing this to you, that we're trying to get funding so that we can actually start doing the requirements we have for that MS4 is a plus. We've got to get it past that to where we're actually doing the things we're required to of the MS4. And so that's where we're hoping that this can move forward again. So we need some help there. And again, I guess if I could use fear, and I don't ever want to do that, there are other communities just like us. We are not unusual in that there's a lot of them that don't have the funding, but the Department of Justice on the federal is starting to come down on some of the larger ones, and they're starting to have lawsuits, and we don't want anything to do with that. That just runs into money, and more problems. So that's what's happening on the federal level. They're starting to be, I would say, a little more of a bully and moving forward to make sure that this is happening like they want. Third, implementation. We do need to make this work. We've already gone through the work of having the pervious and impervious looked at. I believe we could move that forward very quickly, get it to the county. The county would send it out as a tax. The gross property tax, also fairly easy to understand, fairly easy to maintain and to administer. Complexity versus simplicity. If it's very complex, we're going to have manpower, hours, full-time employee, hours to take and address that to make it work. So I still say the simplicity is what we're really shooting for. So that implementation is important. Sales tax would be pretty darn easy. But again, we've got questions there, whether we can or not. 4, passability. We missed the first one by 12 votes. How come? We've got 12 more votes. Was it we didn't have enough outreach? We didn't have enough education going out? What did we do wrong? What could we do right maybe the next time? That's what we need the committee to help us with. Gross acreage is not acceptable, but would it be acceptable if we had a cap? Don't know. Citizen support. That's the other thing I'm going to ask this committee, is that when we're done coming up with a funding mechanism, will you help be a voice, a cheerleader, to help this get passed? Finally, it's got to be fair. And this kind of comes back all the way to that altruistic part. We have residential customers, 6,778. Rural residents, 63. Commercial and commercial secondary, 600. Industrial, 78. Large industry, 5. We are going to have people from large industry. We'll have a couple people from commercial. We're going to invite a couple folks from the developers and builders. We also want to have and make sure we've got the residents. Okay? I'm looking for that kind of the working guy that goes out and works every day and comes home and lives on his either 0.22 acres. 0.22 acres is the average lot size for Hannibal. We want their voice to be heard because we don't want to have one group or another carrying all the weight. It's got to be fair. Now, with that, it's going to be painful for everybody. No, I do not like a tax. I hate them. We need it to move forward with the stormwater utility, but it's got to be fair. And if it's fair, then we can all live with it. And so that's what we've got to work towards. We're going to look for that fair representation. Again, we've got some folks that live on 0.1 acres. The average is 0.22 acres. We've got people that live on more. It's got to be fair to all. And that's what we're shooting for. And so that's why we truly backed off on trying to push forward with that gross acreage. We saw it. Our board saw it. They absolutely did. And we knew that it wasn't the right thing to do. So we're backing up. We're going to try and do it right. So here comes the questions and comments. And I'm going to sit down, but I'm going to ask you for a couple of rules. Okay? Number 1, I like going to church. And I went to church once, and there was a guy that was an attorney. And he had the most beautiful wife of all time. And this guy, I think he was absolutely paid by the word. Sorry, Alex, I'm not throwing rocks at you. And she had this thing, she said, honey, land the plane, okay? Get over that. If you're that person that just likes to talk and talk and talk, I would ask you that I think many of you have something to say tonight. We want to hear from each of you. If you have something that's prepared that you're wanting to read, I would ask you that you summarize, please don't read the whole thing, summarize it and give Courtney, raise your hand again, Courtney, That paper, we will publish it. We're going to take minutes from this meeting, and we will publish it so that everybody can read that and have that. We want to hear from each and every one of you that has questions, comments. We're not going to, if it's a easy home run that Alex Riley believes he can answer right now, we'll do it, but we're not playing. We want to have your questions. We want to have your comments so that we can compile them and be prepared to give you a good answer, not one just off the cuff or off the sleeve, okay? So with that, I'm going to sit down, and it turns out, Mike.
Just one of the illustrations that you might use is the North Street project.
Okay.
From what we're trying to do and you know what the cost is.
Thank you very, very much. That is excellent point. The city has gotten a grant to work on the North Street storm drain. The grant they received is $5 million. It's $5 million of ARPA money. They also have, from Representative Graves, an additional $3.5 million to put with that project. Now, I will tell you, in this financial, we knew there was going to be a $5 million grant, and that has been taken into consideration, okay? Now, we're going to be going, I don't know if any of you saw the construction, you come from roughly the levee, up North Street, path, just not very far. Matt, how far did that go? Halfway to just barely to the alley. So from the alley, we're going to take that 5 plus 3.5, $8.5 million, and right now it's estimated that's going to be able to take that storm drain up to Mark Twain Avenue, turn up Mark Twain Avenue, up to the old bridge approach. Okay, so most of you are shaking your head, you know where that's at? That's going to consume that entire $8.5 million. $5 million to there. Okay. Do the math on that. Matt, how much is that dollars per foot?
Roughly 2,000. And Matt, we have about 150 miles of streets in Hannibal. Okay. we do. And, most of them have storm sewers underneath them.
So, and now, admittedly, that is a large system. That is towards the bottom. But we've got several of those. If we look at the storm drain coming off of St. Elizabeth's that's going under homes, multiple homes, we've got some needs for significant dollars. So, again, thank you, Mike, very, very, very much. We're talking about a real cost. I believe that $3.6 to $4 million a year is truly what we need to do this right, to become proactive.
I'm sorry, that is to reconstruct that portion of North Street to the entrance of the bridge
Either reconstruct or move.
or remove.
Adjust. We may be, it hasn't been completely designed, so it may be moved, it may just be to replace. I can't answer, has not been fully decided. All right, I'm sitting down, I'm shutting up. The meeting is yours. Again, we just simply invite you to be considerate of who else comes next.
I guess we could start with any questions.
Are you going, is this meeting going to talk about bond issues or municipal bonds or anything like that, or is that just something you're going to do with the committee?
That would be something we do with the committee. I will say that so if we were to have an election and said, yes, we're going to be able to collect X number of dollars, we would be able to take that and immediately go get some bonding so that we could begin earlier. But until we have a bond works just like a loan on your home, if you don't have a job and an income, you're not getting a loan. So we've got to have something that says we're going to be able to pay back that bond before we can get one.
I guess the federal government isn't participating in it with any of these cities as far as grants or anything?
Just like so the city was able to get that one grant that's out there, you try, but again, most of those grants are matching funds. And that takes,
I have a question. You talked about 10 years, $3.5 to $4 million a year for the next 10 years. I'm
Yes.
assuming you have a 10-year game plan be absolutely done first, what's gonna be last? Is there a place people can find what your plan is?
Okay, so this, it is, again, it'll be on the website. This paper right here helped us create it. It also shows the 10 years. I will tell you, the very first 2 years, or when we're going to be starting up, there's two things we must do. Number one, we've got to do an assessment of the system. We don't know what's in the ground. I will tell you, when it falls apart, we go and look and plate it, whatever we've got to do. First thing we've got to do is be able to clean it, so that then second we can survey it. And that means going in, looking at what is bad, what is good, and then make a plan. We got to prioritize. So there may be streets, we're going to have to go to the worst, the most, damaged, that's going to fail first. Let's go there, we'll fix that, and we're going to have to know what it is, where it is, and we've got to do the survey, we've got to do the cleaning. So that's absolutely the first thing we're going to do.
So having been associated with the Riverfront project, some of the storm water obviously dumps out into the river. That also silts in during flooding. Is there a way to, in your plan, are you guys planning on, is there a way to jet those out, clean those out, back out after flooding so that it's not backing up into the whole system and slowing everything back down?
You better believe it. It comes right back to those vac trucks, that we can do some of that, and those vac trucks are about $500,000 a piece. So we do one. That's what the plan is to begin with, is to do one. But yes, there's equipment that can do that. It's very expensive. But
Who and how will choose this committee?
I am throwing my board right under the bus. They are going to be helping us make that. We're going to use the sign-up sheet today, and I've already made many calls. I would ask almost for a hand. How many of you did I call and invite you to come to this meeting? Thank you for being here, and I'm still going to throw a loop around you and may ask you to do more. But that's what I'm looking for. I really, truly want to have a good mix of everybody so that everybody's got a voice. Thank you. Great question.
Darren, since most of these structures are privately owned and not owned by the city, what is your timeline and how much do you expect the cost to be to get the legal easements to even access these structures?
Okay, remember the first one, we're going to clean it. Second one, we're going to survey it. Third, we're going to determine who owns what. That's kind of 2.5, I would say. That survey is absolutely essential because, best example, if we were to draw a line up Mark Twain Avenue, I could draw that nice straight line as you draw up right by all the gas stations, etc. Then you kind of turn and head towards the freeway. This storm sewer goes like this, and it goes underneath again, we've got, while on St. Elizabeth's, we've got that storm drain going under private homes. We've got it going under businesses. And whose is that? And that's a great question. So that's number 2.5, 3 on that time frame that we're going to do. First clean, second survey, 3, figure out whose responsibility it is. Yes.
Going back to one of your slides, I think it was the one you were talking about, MS4.
Yes.
Which is $4 million per year times 10 years.
Okay,
funding wise.
Gotcha. Let me clarify that. The $4 million is to include the MS4. That's not an addition to. Is that what you're asking me?
Well, I thought the MS4 was the proposed program that you got. Is that something else?
Yes, it's something else. So thank you. Great question, and let me clarify. So this $4 million a year funding is to help take care of operations of the existing system, maintenance of it, capital projects that might come up that we're going to have to fix, and the MS4. But the MS4 is something that these first 3 is simply to help convey water. Everything we've done in the last 50 years is simply to get water from the top of the hill to the bottom of the hill without wiping out property. The federal government is stepping up and saying, not only do you have to get the water there, it has to be clean.
So the MS4 is a federal requirement?
Yes. And it has to do with water quality. So we're going to...
Like making our sewer water, our sewer that you take care of and dump into the Mississippi is better water than we pulled out to create drinking water.
You got it. Absolutely. And now we're going to have to measure, probably, there's places where they're measuring the nitrates and phosphates coming through the stormwater system into their outfalls.
Well, the other, it's not a concern, but it's, I just think I've been around long enough to know that the federal government doesn't leave anything alone. And neither does the state, to be quite honest. Your $4 million per year that you're funding, messing with it. But like I say, it's great to have a plan, but when we're dealing with the federal government and state and EPA, they're not going to sit still for 10 years and wait for us to catch up with them. They're going to be sitting in rooms coming up with things, more things that we need to do at the local level. But if I may, another comment, and I guess it's not a question. You talked about the first vote that was taken in 19, was it?
19?
That failed by 12 votes. Some of you may know I was on the city council before, and I know the city council puts things on the ballot. The board occasionally puts things on the ballot through the city council, but the city council cannot lobby the voters to vote for an issue. This board cannot lobby anybody. The only way something like that gets passed is that a citizens committee has to be formed and get out and educate the population. That first vote, it didn't happen. That's why it failed by 12 votes. People didn't know what they were voting for. They hadn't been educated, and I'm not pointing fingers. I'm just saying reality, why things happen. And then the second one, the first one had to do, as I understand it, with your square footage on your roofs and driveways and sidewalks that was on your property, and that's how you were going to be assessed. The second one did it based on your acreage of your property. And the price tag of that just blew people's minds. And it may blow their minds again when we put something before them. But the key to it is to take enough time to properly educate the people what they're voting for and why they need to vote it. And the other thing I'll say, Hannibal's been here a long time. This stormwater system we've got downtown is well over 100 years old. And when one collapses, the road collapses. And we've got a lot of danger zones underneath the ground right now. I'll shut up.
Land the plane.
Huh?
Land the plane.
I'm going to land. Let me answer just two things. Number one, you were talking about we want in 10 years. You're absolutely right. I showed that we are only going to have 1% left over from that $40 million of a 10-year collection that we're shooting for. Okay, we're going to have to earn that trust. You're going to have to. I hope again. We've been trying to fill up this bucket of trust at the Board of Public Works by doing the very best we can, dotting the I's and crossing the T's and being the very best utility you've ever seen so that you trust us to be able to say, we're going to be very careful with your money. So that's number one. I forget number 2. We're going to make sure that we do it right. Sorry, Mr. Ball.
That's all right. I've got 2 comments. One's on the committee itself. You know, trying to get volunteers is going to be next to impossible. I mean, I appreciate everybody that's here tonight. It's a good turnout. I think there's been a problem of how you communicate with people that have called up and want to volunteer. I know you want to find a certain census of culture activities that's, you know, on the board or on your committee. But when you tell people that call up and want to volunteer that they're not qualified, that kind of turns them off. So I think if you do have somebody that calls up and wants to volunteer, whatever they're doing, whether they're retired, a school teacher, unemployed, rentals, you know, it affects all of us, all of those people. You need to get their names down so that they can understand the process, because like what Larry said, the first time it went around, there wasn't a lot of education. The second comment, and this will be coming up with the committee on what they decide. The proposals that you've got up there really don't reach out to about 40% of the tax income in the state of Hannibal, and that's visitors, hotels. If you put a tax on that kind of situation, it's not always the burden of the people living here. You know, so that's something that the committee will have to look at and determine.
Go here, then there. I remember my other comment, and that we're going to have that committee, and that committee is going to also help us advertise. If they will.
2 comments. First, kind of along the lane of what Larry was saying. Your $4 million a year, if you're going to do assessments, there obviously are things you have no idea what you're going to uncover out there, correct? That may change that picture, regardless of what federal government or state does. It's just our own infrastructure. Once you actually find it, view it, analyze it, that whole picture may be, instead of $40 million, it may be $100 million. We have no idea, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I just be careful in your messaging. It's not a 10-year plan at $4 million a year. You don't know enough to know that. Okay. The second thing is you're talking about 10 years. I would be careful with that too, unless you're planning on sunsetting that, whatever the provision is. As you well know from your sewer system and any infrastructure, it crumbles over time. This is a perpetual problem. It's not a 10-year problem. So.
Agreed, and thank you.
First a comment and then a question. The comment is that the board cannot lobby, but you can educate the citizenry. So that is allowed under laws. You just have to be very careful on how you do that. The question was, in your estimate of $4 million a year for 10 years, what rate of inflation did you build into that? How did you calculate inflation in that figure?
Matt, do you remember? I don't remember at all. I'm sorry. Something we'll have to look at and find. Again, Matt, be on the sheets. I do not know.
I mean, if it keeps going at 6% plus.
You got it. And agreed. And no, we're not planning on sunsetting.
My question is about in terms of comparing costs in the project. We did a Grand Avenue rebuild several years ago from the community pool down to where your picture showed the water was collecting. I know that wasn't something that was designed to be completely done. Your idea was to replace some storm, and then we wound up replacing everything, including the street. Now we've got a swimming pool at the bottom of Grand Avenue because of all that improvement. Was there an additional plan somewhere for either through the city or through the board to extend the improvements in Grand to help reduce some of that swimming pool? Instead of being 8 inches down there, it could have only been 4. And the cost, I know, had to have been changed over that whole period of time. So we come back and talk about cost of materials, we talk about cost of surveys, and then once you break ground, what you find underneath that. And I think everybody was surprised at what Grand Avenue turned in to be, and more than just a 2-year project to replace pipe.
I don't have that history. We'll have to look into it. I don't have an answer for that. But it's a great question. So what you're saying is we probably ought to be a little more proactive instead of reactive, and we ought to make sure that it's engineered right and do it planned for it and do it right.
Review where you started on the grand project and how it ended up, and the changes and the change orders that you made as you went through that, to see how this program is going to be impacted if you're talking about 150 miles of street, not counting all the other waterfall areas that fall in underneath that.
I have a question. So, are there other communities in the state of Missouri that you guys have looked at that are dealing with something similar? How are they dealing with it?
That Western Kentucky study shows that there's 4 other utilities in Missouri that have been established. There are some down by St. Louis, some in Kansas City. I think is it Springfield. The larger ones have got them established, and we have talked to some of them about what they've done.
Do you know what their funding mechanism is in those communities?
Again, comes to that study, and yes. The one that I'm interested in is the one in Kansas City that has that dual. They do both property and sales. So there's also one that did the pervious-impervious. They were sued. Therefore, it can't be a rate. It has to be a tax. There's all kinds of things that have gone on. So, yeah, there's people that have gone through. They've gotten through all the bumps and stuff, and we're trying to learn from them. Oh, yeah. It's got to be on it.
So if you want to do a 2-prong deal with sales tax and property tax, and that funds a municipal bond?
Not a bond, but it could do a bond, but I'm shooting to get a reliable revenue source so we can fund our stormwater.
Well, I understand that, but you're gonna have. I don't know how. I mean, I kind of know how difficult municipal bonds are because I dealt with it with the levy. I was on the levy board, and it is, you do have to have the revenue. I know, but if you have those 2 entities doing that, that would fund, and you could do a 5-year prospectus on what you need for a municipal bond, and the money you collect from sales tax and property tax would fund that, and you'd have extra money from that each year that you could put aside to take care of those problems you don't know about. You see what I'm saying?
I do.
Do you have any idea when you expect the committee to get formed and start?
What we'd like to see is in 1 month, have a committee formed, invited, and have the first meeting where we kind of introduce everything again, let them see what's going on, look at their options, let them go home, do their homework, come back and have a vote or a discussion where they come up with where they want to go with it. Give that to us. We look at the dollars amount. We look at the legal side of it, make sure it can do it. Then come to the next one, have a final vote. So we're looking at 3 months worth, but having one about once a month. That's what I believe would be appropriate to be able to get the work done.
Part of this funding that you're going to get, is it going to be for the survey?
That's part.
I guess what I'm thinking is, why wouldn't you do the survey and find out what it's going to cost for this whole project instead of? I kind of feel like the $4 million might be just kind of a guess.
It's an educated guess, but we cannot spend any more money. We currently owe from a stormwater utility to our electric fund about $1.3 million because we have been funding stormwater work up to that point. We just took an $11 million bond so that we could do a 161 line, and in the covenants of that bond, it said we cannot lend it to anybody. So it has shut that door. We also went and built the GAC at the water plant. That was about, what, $9 million bond that we floated there. They said, you cannot lend anybody any of this money. It has to go exactly to what you said it's for. We cannot, and we've got other rules that say you cannot do it. And so we've had to shut that door so that we cannot self-fund that interior by moving funds from one to the other. That is against all of the GASB and every other rule.
Understand that you're getting a $5 million bond, or you're getting a $5 million grant from the government and a $3.5 million grant, and you're only going to need $5 million for that project downtown.
Let me clarify that. The city is getting the $5 million grant from the ARPA, and the city is getting the $3.5 million from Senator Graves, Representative Graves. Man, I've already got him another job. That's there. It's for that storm, and it's earmarked specifically for that storm sewer, and it cannot go anywhere else. It cannot be used for survey. It cannot be used for any cammering, cleaning. That's theirs. Yep. We're going to manage that project, but that's their money, and it's not BPW money.
Well, Alex, to kind of address the legal side of that, if there's an issue there. I don't know if he has any further thoughts.
Not at the moment.
Okay.
Not, okay. I'll go here, then here. Okay.
All I was going to say is, I think everybody realizes this. You have to have money to get money from anybody, any of these grants from the state or the federal or EPA or whatever. You have to have a funding source to match with it. So I assumed everybody knows that, but I would hope that once we have a funding source, we're going to go for every grant we can possibly get, matching fund wise, to get the maximum use out of the dollars that we collect.
Currently, stormwater just runs right into the river, but I gather from this MS4, it will have to be treated in the future? Did I misunderstand that?
Eventually, I believe so. But currently, we've got to do, all right, I'm going to look at Matt now. 6 things that we have to do with the MS4 currently. We have to make sure that everybody's educated. We have to go and do an outreach for everybody, teaching you how to make sure there's no oil and stuff and dirty and your dog manure is picked up so you don't get nitrates in the water and all this other good stuff, that you're doing all of your fertilizing appropriately. So there's an education arm to it. There is no illicit dumping. So we have to have somebody that goes out and makes sure that there is nobody doing that. So we've got to have a semi-police force. What that looks like, there is done many different ways. We have to make sure that any new construction, while construction is going on, is being inspected and ensure that it is not dumping and pushing dirt into the community. Once that construction is done, you have to have a post-construction inspection to make sure that it continues to, that the swells are maintained, that all of that system that's above ground is maintained. And finally, what else?
Good housekeeping, that the municipal facilities are following the rules. We're not introducing pollutants to stormwater, covering dumpsters, washing vehicles inside, disposing of our oil or chemicals properly, making sure we're not fertilizing at inappropriate rates.
And I've seen communities, so again, you got the larger communities that are your big metropolis areas, they have an MS41 requirement. We're at a 2. If you go from that 2 to a 1, then you actually have to start taking and putting in recovery areas, such as a wetlands area where the stormwater comes in, hits that first. That wetlands area then removes nitrates, phosphates, and you're able to show that that happens. You then have to build those, maintain those, so that your water quality is improving as it goes into the river. So those are the steps. Again, Mark did a great job of sharing. We're scratching the surface here. Yes, sir.
If we need to raise $4 million a year, what would be our tax rate?
Depends on what kind of tax.
Well, what rate? I'm saying quarter cent, 50, half cent?
So,
Half cent rate is about 1.6 million. Half cent.
And again, we looked at the average, if we were to use the gross acreage, the average property size was 2.22 acres, and that person was going to be paying approximately $124 a year. So that's what we're looking at. If we were to just kind of make it, if everybody had that size house, you'd be paying roughly $10 a month. That's, what's that? It would have got you. Yeah, yours would have been more.
With a pond on it that's draining on the neighborhood.
Yes, sir.
So I'm gonna be responsible for my neighborhood?
But, and again, maybe with a cap, what would be fair?
I'll trade you.
What do you got? You're the 150?
Can you define pervious and impervious? That was on your slide.
Okay, pervious and impervious. Impervious means when the rain comes down, it hits your roof, it hits your driveway and sidewalks. And that impervious will not let the water go in, and therefore it's going to run off your house into the street and become stormwater. The pervious is the grass, is the woodlands, is the forest, that it hits that and it absorbs into the soil and becomes groundwater and not stormwater.
As long as it's not 2 inches an hour.
There you go. And yes, absolutely.
So hotels, shopping centers, all the impervious water that comes off of theirs, they'd have a separate tax rate.
Did we have
Parking
a different
lots.
tax rate proposed for them?
It was just across the board. But everybody was paying that rate.
So you have, anybody here from General Mills? You look at their parking lot. I mean, there's not much pervious there.
But that was only for people who are paying property tax. If you're not paying property tax, like a church, most of the churches do not pay property tax, and they've got parking lots, so they would be exempt from that.
That is correct. So we also know that approximately 20%, I think it ended up being 18.9% of all of our acreage of Hannibal is under a a tax exempt situation.
There we go. So can you give a flavor of what the cost of non-compliance with MS4 would be in terms of fines and penalties?
No. As of right now, no. It's simply so we got a letter that we were out of compliance on several things, and it's between ourselves and the city. We're going to work together to respond to this. We will write that back to them, let them know what we're doing, and then it will either go to a NOV, notice of violation, or they will accept it. And then from there, we just work with them. Could it end up that it costs us money? I guess it could. I don't know what kind of teeth the state has in that, if you have any idea. Yeah.
Unclear to me at the moment.
And I think it's unclear to everybody.
I'm not sure about that program.
Yeah.
But typically, a lot of them are $5,000 or $10,000 a day.
I came from the.
I'd much rather spend money solving a problem than paying somebody to beat us over the head.
You got it. So his response was it'd be about $5,000 to $10,000 a day.
Are you funding stormwater now with sewer water tax?
We're not funding it. We're not doing it. We're not doing it. We're not. We're working now to try and get that funding source. We have, and again, emergencies. The city has been pretty much just patching the streets back together and putting as little into it as possible.
Didn't you say you borrowed the money from the electric department for the $1.2 million or something?
We did.
Okay. You're funding it through that then?
That's correct. Prior to me getting here.
That has to be paid back to the electric department.
That is correct.
That has to be paid back to the electric department.
Correct.
There's a quarter of a year of your first taxes.
Yeah.
Right. No, you're right.
Well, it was a well-documented loan.
And that's included in the financial funding.
Say that again.
that amount of money that came from the electric fund to the sewer water fund is 100% accounted for. And Paul can tell you to the penny what it is. There's also been a formal agreement between the electric department and the stormwater department to establish the fact that it is a formal loan and it will be paid back. Yeah.
Your 4 million you're gonna raise the first year in taxes that you want, 1 million needs to go there almost.
It may make a payment or 10.
Yeah.
If you look at, again, take a look at what we have there. I believe it's actually in year 4 or 5 that it's going to be paid back. And so we that's recognized in that assessment.
I'd just like to echo what Larry said. This committee, when it gets formed up, has 2 major challenges to it. One, you can see from this discussion, there is going to be a major challenge among the members on how we put this all together. Then the second thing is the committee is going to have to take it on themselves to get out and sell this with a board dealing in facts only, and this committee getting out to the various clubs, neighborhoods, media, and actually getting whatever we've selected to whatever program was selected to put together to bring that out so that the public's fully aware of what it's going to do.
Are we questioned out and commented out?
Well, it's a 100-year problem. It's not going to get fixed overnight. But we got to do something.
I love it. With that, would you like to adjourn?
I'd like to have a motion to adjourn if we're finished.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
All right. We're adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.